Hello everyone, my name is Spiny, and I'm here today to give you a tutorial on how I made my cardboard mp7. It's a fairly simple process, but I didn't get many photos or videos of it because originally I wasn't planning on making a tutorial, but I digress. I will try my best to give a good guide on how I made it and try to explain everything in deepest detail that I can. And for next time I'll try and remember to get footage and pictures so I can fully explain it. The mp7 is a weapon seen in many games, ranging from some of the most arcade shooters to the realistic. For me, I based my mp7 off the versions found in Rainbow Six Siege and Insurgency Sandstorm, two games that are some of my favorites, with one of them being played in the background while I give this exposition. Nevertheless, let's begin. So the first thing you're going to want to do before you get started is to get some tools for this. I myself used an X-Acto knife, a box cutter, a drill, and a hot glue gun. After you get these, you're going to have to make a scale model of the gun on paper. I used an A4 size printer paper to make the outline seen here. Once you get the scale drawing of the gun, the next step is to start cutting the main body of it out. I have a technique that I use for this where I poked holes into the paper and made it into sort of a connecting the dots game. From there, you can draw the lines to connect the holes you made in the cardboard and cut out the main body of the gun. Note, you should do this twice so you have both panels of the main body. You are also going to have to turn that into a box, so use some cardboard that is 2 inches wide, or 51 millimeters, and as long as the length of the panel, and then from there, attach it to the gun. Also, on a side note, the top part that's supposed to be slanted is not to be attached until later on. You should hold off on that. What I meant is this. What's marked in red here you should cut off along the line, but make sure to save the piece for later because it's going to be used to cover up the bolt mechanism. You can then also try and remove any corrugation showing by using the X-Acto knife to cut off some of the outer layers, as shown like this. On how I cover my corrugation. This works really well, and it's fairly simple too. The whole idea around it is that you're just going to cut through 2 layers of the corrugation here, alright? So, let's take this top layer, right? So, as you can see, there's 3 layers of the corrugation. There's the top paper, there's the middle waves, and then there's the bottom paper also. What you're going to want to do is cut through only the waves and the top layer, or whatever layer that you're using at that time. So then it should come off fairly easily because it isn't really glued on well. So once you do that, you have this piece here, alright? So if you attached it like this, you would have a lot of corrugation showing, and corrugation is not good showing unless you need it for something, for example, rails. With this piece here, if you do it like this, it's a lot cleaner along with that also. And I'll show you here also. So we're going to add hot glue there, and then we just slap this piece on. Wait for it to cool a small amount. And then here. This looks so much cleaner and so much better than before. Just for anybody who wants to see it like fully, properly cleaned. It looks like this. It's very clean. It's honestly better than before. And it looks a lot better than having corrugation showing, for example, like this. So that's my guide on how to cover corrugation. Once you finish that, you should then get started on making the bolt and the grip, which are fairly simple. What you first want to do is mark the ejection port and then figure out how far ahead it needs to be so you can pull back the handle and it will open and close. In the picture below, the black box means that it's on the other side. On a side note, pretend that the area above the round line does not exist. That part should not be covered up yet. For the grip, it's as simple as making 2 panels and connecting them with the cardboard strip in between, making a sort of box, and then from there, attaching it to the bottom of the main body as seen here. From there, you then need to add a tube with paper into the gun, which will act as what the bolt rides on. The white triangle is where the tube should go, and then from there you should hot glue it into the gun so it sits nicely, making sure to leave a bit sticking out on either end, which will be cut off later. Feel free to increase the length of the tube if you need to, in case the paper is too small. Then from there, you need to make the actual bolt. It's pretty simple. You need to make another larger tubes in terms of diameter so that it can fit snugly over the barrel and ride on it. Make sure to cut it down so it's a bit bigger than the ejection port. Once you make the bolt, you then need to get another strip of cardboard to add onto the top of the main body. Make sure to use the pictures seen here as an example of what the bolt should look like. From there, you then need to cover up the bolt as shown here, making sure to cut out a small section of the part you just added that can allow for a layered strip of cardboard onto the top of the bolt, so that it sticks out above the top of the part you just added. That part will then be used as a connecting piece between the bolt and the bolt handle. From there, you then need to add on the bolt handle. Once that is attached, it should look like this and should be able to move back and forth and cover the ejection port. Make sure to also drill a hole in front of the opening to allow for a small paper tube. I used a post-it note to fit in and act as what the rubber band will hold on to. This part is completely optional if you don't want the bolt to be able to go back and forth on its own. Once that is done, you will then need to take the two parts that were cut off originally and then attach them back onto the gun at a slant, such so that it will look like this. Once that is done, you should add the front part of the front guard. This part's also simple. You just need to take a strip of cardboard as thick as you think it should be, and then make a U shape at the bottom. And then cut into the U shape, making it thinner at the bottom, and then slowly and gradually getting thicker, back to its original state. Once that is done, you should then add it to the front of the gun. Later on, also make some pieces to round at the top of the part to give the front a bit more shape. Afterwards, you should get started on a very simple piece, the folding grip. It's a very easy system. It's based around a sort of hinge. What you first want to do is layer up some cardboard in a more circular shape, and then from there, drill a hole into it. Or if you don't have a drill, try to cut a hole of similar size into each piece in the center. Then from there, to make the grip, you'll take two panels. Both of them have to be long enough to fold into the trigger guard, which will be made later and will be made around it. Once you have them, put one on top of the layered piece, and using the hole, make another hole in the grip, or mark the place where you need to put the hole, and then drill into it. From there, repeat the process onto the other side, and then add strips of cardboard to thicken it up and turn it into a box as shown here. This step is optional also. You can also make the grip static and attach it to the gun. After that is done, you have to work onto the back of the stock. This can either be in the retracted position or in the extended. I haven't figured out how exactly to get the stock to retract and unretract, but it would be much more rigid closed and extended. What you need to do here is first create the back of the stock, which you then need a rough shape for, which I am going to show here. It doesn't necessarily need to be exact, but it should look similar to this. Along with that also, it should be in relation to the gun, so make sure to look at some photos and try to measure out exactly what you need. Once you have two panels for that, you then need to make a box using it and making sure to leave this spot open, which I have indicated with an arrow. Once you have that finished, you then need to take two strips of cardboard and then layer them up a large amount. They should be thick and rigid by the end, but not too thick that they look improper. You can also try to add some more supports to the back of the gun when possible, as seen in the photo above. Then, once that is done, you are to attach them to the gun, pretty much by attaching it to the back side. If you haven't covered that up yet, which I completely forgot to add, you should, for the size of the gun and the top. What you then need to do is take some strips of cardboard out of it to then make it seem as though there's a groove there. Once you do that, you then need to add in a few new pieces, those being the firing selector and the bolt release, I think? Someone in the comments will correct me on this if I am wrong on that, but those are simple also. You first need to drill a hole into both sides, making sure that they are in line with one another for both where the hinge is supposed to be for the bolt release and the firing selector. And then, once you put in the paper tube, you should hot glue a piece of cardboard to either side that is in the shape of what the firing selector should be. After that is done, it should then be able to pivot up, down, and be able to select, or, for the case of the bolt release, be able to move up and down. This step is completely optional, but it will definitely add to the gun anyways, if you are looking to make it for a cosplay, or just as a prop. Once you're finished with this, then you can begin to work on the smaller details, such as the trigger guard and some of the other items also. One of the main things that is necessary to add if you want to attach sights is a rail mount. This is extremely simple also, with it just being at the point where there's one strip of cardboard that is thicker and longer, and another which is much shorter and thinner. Both have to be the length of the top side of the gun, but one much thinner than the other. Along with this also, making the bolt handle, which should be in a T shape instead of just a stick. This part is also pretty simple too, with it just being layering up the bolt handle and then adding onto it a flat piece of cardboard, which is also layered up, as seen here. You just need to make the sights, which can be either extremely simple with just notches, or you could go with a raised sight also. I made a raised sight because mine was based off of the mp7A1 from Rainbow Six Siege, or the Insurgency Sandstorm version with flip-up sights. The sights are simple to make. You need to make two female parts for the rails, and then attach the sight parts to them. These are very simple, with it just being two posts, with one with a circle on it, and the other being a standard 3 prongs. Once finished, it should look like this. After that is done, you should then cut out part of the bottom grip so that the magazine can fit into it, and if you haven't already, cut out the top layer of the corrugation so that you can have some more detail and texturing. And now that the flip-up sides are finished, you can now move on to making the magazine. For this, it's fairly simple. All you really need to do is try and make a strip of cardboard curve as it comes out of the mag well. Or if you need 20 round mags, you just need to make it fit inside of the mag well in the first place. Also, note how any gaps that were inside of the grip are filled. And it should go without saying that you should be turning those two strips into a box so it would fit into the mag well. Once you are done with that, you are pretty much fully done with a cardboard replica of an mp7. I know this was fairly subpar of a guide, but bear with me. I didn't plan on making a tutorial for this until after I finished, and I realized I could. So if you have any questions concerning a part or another thing, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll try to respond to them as best as I can and explain what I really did there.